Good morning, Ken Bass here on the Something Country Saturday morning. I don't expect that I need to explain to anyone in our audience that in this time of ambushes on police officers and growing negative rhetoric about our police and other first responders, that times have changed here in America. Many of us are not only upset by that, but we are openly angry. But so many have no idea of what we can actually do about that, other than take a trip to the polls on November 8th or through early voting to initiate regime change. There's something else that I suspect everyone in my audience knows. That's the name of Pat Boone. Pat Boone has been an entertainment icon for decades, ranging back to the mid-1950s. Most know him as a recording artist, a TV star, even a movie actor. As you are about to hear, he has recently taken pen in hand and written some songs centered around law enforcement themes. This has led to his production of an extended play CD that includes 4 songs, 3 of which he himself sings. This week we have added one of those songs to our regular playlist of current songs. It's titled Part of America Died Today. We'll hear that song in just a few minutes, but first, I had the great pleasure yesterday morning of recording an interview with Pat Boone, which I now present. Good morning, 95.1 FM, KALH, Ken Bass here on the radio with you. And on the phone with me, we are most pleased to have a guest with us today by the name of Pat Boone. Hi, Pat.
Hello. Good to talk to you, Ken.
Good to talk to you, too. Just to let you know, you and I got started in this crazy music business long about the same time. So,
whoa, that was another century.
Yeah, it was. So we've both been at this a while. And as I recall, back in that dim, dark, prehistoric past, you had just almost as many hits as Elvis Presley, didn't you?
You know what, Ken? I just found out recently that I had one more top 40 chart hit. The thing was, as fast as a record peaked, wherever it went to 17 or 27 or 1, when it dropped about 2 points on the chart, out came the next record. And so we kept everything going. And sometimes a record was on the charts, but not very long, because as soon as it dipped, we came out with the next one. But there were some top 40 chart hits, or maybe 41 now in the late 50s. So I had a great relationship with my buddy Elvis, but of course we were friendly competitors too. 2 boys from Tennessee.
Oh yeah. And you were both involved some in cover tunes. You covered a lot of the black artists back then, when some stations were discriminating against them.
Yes, and I took some heat, which people nowadays wouldn't have even thought about. But yeah, when I was recording R&B, rhythm and blues music, which was not known or played on pop radio, but doing songs by Little Richard and Fats Domino and the Flamingos and a lot of the Ivory Joe Hunter and Ivory Joe Turner. And I was taking some heat because, a lot of that music at that point was raw. It wasn't filtered in any way. Some of the lyrics were not just suggestive, but sometimes, outright very explicit. So, but I was always cleaning up the lyrics. I didn't do anything that it wasn't G-rated, but I was trying to capture the flavor of the music, and fortunately for me, I captured enough of it that my records were the hits of some of those songs, even though people like Frank Sinatra and Doris Day and other artists did cover some of those rhythm and blues songs. They just didn't sound like they were supposed to sound.
No.
But I was actually, you could check it, I was actually on the rhythm and blues charts as a rhythm and blues artist in the early days of my career with, like Ain't That a Shame, Fats Domino was number 1 R&B in their charts and sold about 150,000, which was very big. I recorded his song in 1955. It went to number 1 pop and rock and roll, as we were calling it, and went to number 9 on the R&B chart. Even though his record had already been a hit, my record became a hit as well of his song on the R&B chart. So when I went to some of the radio stations in the beginning, before I was widely known, and the record promotion guy would say, "I got this kid Pat Boone. He's got this hit record of Ain't That a Shame." And the radio station, the program director would look over and say quietly, "Yeah, Pat Boone, sure." "What do you mean?" He said, "Pat Boone's black," or use some other euphemism.
Yeah.
And so I was complimented because I'd have to show them my identification bracelet or sing them a little of the song, so they would believe that I was a white guy singing those R&B songs.
Oh, yeah. And I was very blessed that I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and we had a couple of black stations. One of them was actually black-owned, and so I got to hear all of both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and you know, there was a period, it was a transition period that had to happen when pop artists, not just white, there were black artists as well, who were pop artists, who were recording rhythm and blues songs and bringing them over from R&B into pop. And there was a little, at one point, there came a decision that had to be made by Alan Freed and other DJs. Are we going to play the original record or the cover record? Mm-hmm. And fortunately for me, they'd been playing my cover records first, and then they switched over eventually and played the original records. And of course, us doing cover records, that opportunity sort of fizzled away. But Elvis, the Beatles, all of us recorded and covered black hits because they were so infectious and commercial and fun and good. But after a while, that introduced to the big white audience or the big pop audience familiarity with who the original artists were. So we weren't taking anything from them. We were opening a door and offering them the chance to become better known themselves.
And especially since some of those artists actually wrote the songs, they benefited from the covers in terms of royalties too.
Oh yeah, quite often. In fact, I went down to New Orleans, appearing at the Fairmont Hotel while Fats Domino was appearing at Al Hurt's place, and a big kind of theater in the round type situation. And he and his musicians were down in the center of this circular place. And I went to see him. I wanted to hear him and perform, and never had. So he learned I was there, and he had me come down and sit on the piano bench with him in front of everybody.
Wow.
And he wasn't much of a talker, but he says, "You folks see this ring?" And he had diamond rings on most of his fingers, but this was a really big piano-shaped diamond ring on one of his fingers. He said, "This man bought me this ring with this song, You, Me Cry When You Said," and we sang Ain't That a Shame together.
Oh boy, that was those were the days, and we're in different days now.
Oh man, it was fun then. It was a whole time of change, of new awakenings, and the music itself, really, almost all the music was much more innocent than it is now. It was fun. It was just plain fun, and the words hardly mattered. I mean, wop, bop, a loo, bop, a lop, bop, bop, that means the same thing in every language.
Exactly. Exactly. We have transitioned, and so have you. You, over the years, have been there for various media, movies and TV, and still recording. And a lot of people find that amazing. Of course, a lot of people find I get up every morning at 3 o'clock and do the news, too. But
yeah, well, you know, if it's something you like and something you do well, it's hard not to keep doing it. Yeah. And yes, I'm continuing to record. I own my own label. It doesn't have great distribution, but right now, with the police support songs that I've written, and I've been writing for years, and nobody particularly wanted to hear songs of support for the police. So I was writing and recording, putting them out on one album or another, but not getting much attention. But now suddenly, after Dallas, after Orlando, after Milwaukee, and all these other places where police are being killed just because they're police, These songs are all over radio now, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Every genre: country, pop, Christian, rhythm and blues, adult, contemporary. And I find my record of A Part of America Died ahead of really big name artists. Who are, I'm sure within one of them, I think it's the adult contemporary chart. I'm in sandwiched between Adele and Katy Perry, which is
not a bad place to be.
Nice place to be, but I mean, it's a shock. But people are resonating to the ways to express our support for these men and women in blue who go out to war every day, and they're not in Afghanistan or Syria or someplace like that. It's our neighborhoods, and they're risking their lives for us. And when the call comes, emergency 911, they don't ask what color are you, what race. They just come running to see if you're in trouble and can they help. And some of them are paying a terrible price for just being our police and our first line of defense. So I'm glad that you, among so many others now, are willing to play this song, A Part of America, and then another one, Won't Be Home Tonight for Dinner, Darling. It's more of a country-flavored song, which I think you'll like.
I like that one, yeah.
And then The Empty Uniform, or He'll Never Walk Alone. These are songs about the humanity of these men and women who have families and kids and dreams, and who decided they want to serve the American people by being police. And now some are dying because they made that choice, and it's got to stop.
Yep. Something that you're probably not aware of, because for some reason I haven't seen it on the national news, but right here in our area of New Mexico, at Hatch, New Mexico, where all of the green chilies come from, we lost an officer last week, stopped a car that was behaving in a suspicious manner, got out, was walking towards the car. A passenger in that car got out, shot him dead. Well, didn't shoot him dead. He shot him in the neck. He died several hours later at the trauma center in El Paso.
Oh, see, this just absolutely breaks my heart. It makes me mad because of the injustice and the stupidity and the brutality, but it also makes me so sad for not just the victim, the police and his family, but for the people that are so jaded, so numbed out morally, that they can do this kind of thing with no regard for what he's doing to the lives of innocent other people, just because that person is in his or her way. We've got to get our society back into a healthy mode where we appreciate each other. There was one other song. I don't know if you got the EP with 4 songs, but the 4th song is Can't We Get Along? A song I wrote when Rodney King took that awful beating. Of course, he was high and he was resisting arrest, but he didn't deserve what he got that night at the hands of these police that were just beating the way out of him. So the LA riot started. It was a terrible thing, but then when he finally was able to get up and talk to the press, instead of saying something inflammatory, which he certainly could have done, in that cracked voice and with that head still all puffy and swollen, he said, "Can't we get along? Can't we just be friends?" And I thought, man, that's more profound than the president or the governor or the police chief or anybody said. And here's the guy that took the beating, and he's saying, "Can't we just get along?" So I wrote a song and did a video, and that's part of the same little EP with 4 songs on it. And I'm really proud. I had a great girl singer, sing that one, although I've recorded it, but she does such a good job. I put her version of it on my recording.
We're really looking forward to that. The hard copy is supposed to be in here this afternoon, so we're looking for it to arrive on UPS just any time this afternoon, so our listeners will be exposed to that as well.
That's great. And if they want to go to YouTube or my Facebook page or PatBoone.com, of course, we're exposing it every way we can, because that's the purpose, is to just try to touch people's hearts and have them all say, look, we got to support the men and women in blue. Let's salute, let's support, and also be concerned with the families that are left behind. we're donating proceeds to the U.S. Deputy Sheriff Association that does a lot of that great work for their own, and I didn't know of a better way to send some of the proceeds, if not all of them. We got to have enough to keep producing, but
Yeah.
but the proceeds to the Deputy Sheriff's Association.
Well, that's great. Of course, something that we want to touch on here just a little bit, because I well know your background in Christian music and what an important influence Christ has had in your life over the years and your family's life.
Yeah.
Way we see it here at KALH is that the tendency in this country to move away from Christ-centered standards is a big cause for this change in America.
Yes, and I do a lot of stuff like write articles for WorldNet Daily, Newsmax. I've written, about almost 400 articles for WorldNet Daily. The latest, my working title was, "What the blank are we going to do now?" And I leave the blank, the word for you to fill in the blank. but then the WMD changed the title to "Has God Deserted America?" And I make the point that in the Bible, and go back to 1 Samuel, but you can go back even before that, where God has always given his instructions to people, set things up for them like he did in the very beginning and with the people of Israel, but they have individual choice about whether they obey and get in line or not. And then he backs away and lets them either be blessed or disobey and disregard, and then start reaping the consequences. And then if they really, like they did with the people of Israel, they finally went into Babylonian captivity because they demanded a king like the people around them. They weren't happy with the law of Moses and the Mosaic provisions and regulations and the judges. So they said, "Hey, we want to be like all the other nations." And Samuel complained to God, and God said, "Don't worry, Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. Let them have their kings." So they did, and eventually wound up dispersed, Jerusalem destroyed, and the whole nation that survived in Babylonian captivity. So America has been a nation under God, built on Judeo-Christian principles, the Constitution, and for all these years we have flourished and been the greatest nation and power in the world, the envy of everybody. Now we culturally start taking his name off everything. We don't let kids pray at the beginning of a school day. We don't let a valedictorian even talk about Jesus in the valedictory exercise, or a sports team pray. And there are people who absolutely want to take Jesus' name, God's name off everything, have a totally secular society. In fact, one of the two nominees for president of the feminine persuasion.
That makes it pretty clear.
Yeah, it says we've got to revise all of these old restrictive religious ideas, because it's getting in the way of some of the political and other social things we want to do. So we can't always be restricted by these old religious ideas. That's her view. I'm praying that the other candidate, who happens to be a male, will, and a wild one at that, but is going to be more receptive to, and have the advisors around him make him aware, as King Josiah and Joash, the two kings that were really good kings before Israel fell completely, were boys, 7- and 8-year-old boys who became kings. And because they followed God, Israel was blessed. And, even God used a mule. King James calls it an ass, with Naaman the prophet, who was moving against God's will. And the ass saved his life and talked to him in his language. And so if God can use an ass in that regard, he could even use one now to get his will done. And it could be either candidate, if one will absolutely seek his will for our sakes. But otherwise, a nation, as Reagan said, a nation not under God will be a nation gone under. And unfortunately, we're taking some awful sliding moves toward third world status if we don't wake up.
We're certainly going to be watching very close come November 8th to see what direction this country is going to go, because that'll be a telling.
We got to pray, think, and vote. Those are my words for today. Pray, think, and vote.
Well, we'll leave it at that, Pat. It's sure been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you, Ken. I enjoyed it, too. We're old buddies, I can tell.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Simpatico, as they say.
Yeah.
And right now, we're going to give a great listen to that song that we've already been playing here for our listeners on 95.1 FM, KALH. A part of America died today. This is Pat Boone.
Somebody killed a policeman today, and a part of America died. A piece of our country he swore to protect will be buried with him at his side. The suspect who shot him will stand up in court with counsel demanding his rights, while a young widowed mother must work for her kids and spend many long, lonely nights. The beat that he walked was a battlefield too, just as if he'd gone off to war. Though the flag of our nation won't fly at half-mast, to his name they'll add a gold star. Somebody killed a policeman today, maybe in your town or mine. While we slept in comfort behind our locked doors, a cop put his life on the line. Now his ghost walks the beat on a dark city street, and he stands at each new rookie's side. He answered the call of himself, gave his all, and a part of America